Hi, this is Frank Schaefer, and I want to thank you for sharing my YouTube videos and for watching them. And I would ask you, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. It helps what I'm doing and get the word out. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Frank Schaefer, and I would like to pass a warning on to you and a message of hope. You know, I don't think anyone could claim to have fought harder for the election of Joe Biden the first time around than me. A couple of the videos I posted about it went to hundreds of thousands of views. I got all sorts of feedback. I was on all kinds of TV programs talking about his presidency. And I count myself honored to have been among those who worked very hard to see that Kamala Harris was elected and she didn't win. And I come from an evangelical religious right background. In fact, the New York Times once called my parents evangelical royalty when they were reviewing a book of mine, Crazy for God, about why I had fled the evangelical movement. I know a lot about the religious right. I know that my family was part of the reason the religious right absorbed and then consumed and then regurgitated the Republican Party as the MAGA movement, now owned wholly and exclusively by Donald Trump. I am no fan of Donald Trump, to put it very mildly. I mention all this because I think that we Democrats, we of the left, we consider ourselves liberals, open-minded, whatever, could be making a very big mistake if we forget something. And that is that we are also very, 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 very fortunate to be living in the United States right now, even with Donald Trump as president, even with a Supreme Court that has been subsumed by a bunch of very conservative Roman Catholics and others who are taking the religious right opinions that were crafted by my father in the 1970s and the 1980s, myself, Dr. C. Everett Koop, who became Surgeon General of the United States, and in turn regurgitating them in the form of people like Opus Dei members, this secretive Roman Catholic organization with its roots back into the Spanish Civil War and Francisco Franco, Amy Coney Barrett, and others. And we look at all this and we throw up our hands in holy horror and say, this is no longer my country. This is not my president. Maybe we'll move to where? Well, not Syria, as it descends into whatever the hell happens next to this country as Islamist, autocratic, authoritarian, totalitarians at best, and maybe terrorists at work take over the country. And probably not Israel in a time of war on all fronts, and certainly not Iran. And even if Saudi Arabia manages to get the World Cup, which it looks like they will, in an ultimate statement of sports washing to cover up their terminal misogyny, not to mention the fact that they do as much as 80 executions a day, including political prisoners, not to mention the murder of an American resident journalist a few years ago by the Crown Prince. Maybe not to France either, as it falls into political anarchy and ungovernable situation again as Macron is moved over perhaps by Le Pen and the far right, and perhaps not Italy with Meloni and her post-fascist government mirroring Orban's government of Hungary. Maybe not even the United Kingdom with the national health system, where it takes 7 years to get an appointment for finding a new dentist if you aren't privately insured, and the waiting times for hip replacement are about a year and a half, and emergency rooms are clogged. You know, we are privileged to live in the United States of America, and I know to my left-wing friends this sounds very jingoistic, but aren't we racist, and didn't we have slavery? And aren't we colonizers? And aren't we living on land that belonged to Native Americans? Yes, indeed. And pay attention, please. So is everyone else. This is world history. This is who human beings are, with a few rays of light occasionally, very much represented by people like Jefferson, who was both a slaveholder and hypocritically called for freedom and enlightenment. What an awful person. Yes, he's exactly like you and me. In fact, the hypocrisy of the liberal movement right now is that we benefit from Christendom, Christianity, Christ being executed like a slave on a cross, who said that the least of these shall inherit the earth, and that the weak are those who we should favor, not the strong. In other words, he wasn't a tech bro riding a roughshod over everybody, or a health insurance executive of the kind who got shot this week, running a company that denied coverage to people for the least reason, and people died as a result. No, Jesus said the least of these count, and that the weak shall be first, the last shall be first, and the first shall be last. And this was a revolutionary idea. And though I am an atheist, repeat, I am an atheist, I am mighty glad I live in the last glimmer of what Christendom once was and still is when it shapes things like the United Nations Human Rights Declaration, which I know the French and others coming from the French Revolution, that blood path instigated by people like Robespierre and the other Jacobins, like to claim somehow came from outer space and is a secular innovation, a humanist innovation that comes from the Enlightenment and the Renaissance and Voltaire and Rousseau and the other philosophers. But of course, when those philosophers criticized and hated Christianity, the only way they could criticize it was by using the standards of Jesus's and St. Paul's teaching against the church and accusing them of hypocrisy, because there was no other standard by which to accuse them. Where would they go? The Saracen pirates, as they invaded all of Europe with this new religion called Islam back in the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th century. The pushback during the Crusades, when Europe finally got tired of being invaded by Muslim armies and pushed back. Where would you go for an example? So the fact that we live in the vestiges of Christendom is a lucky thing. It means that I can still speak to you with a modicum of free speech, even though Trump and his minions threaten those of us who speak up for rights that he may well trample. But that said, I was reminded of something, in fact, that involved Donald Trump just the other day. I was watching on YouTube and then France 24, the French news channel, live, the full 3-hour and 12-minute presentation of the reopening of Notre Dame Cathedral, packed with world dignitaries, including Elon Musk and Donald Trump and Joe Biden and Meloni from Italy and the Prince of Wales from the United Kingdom, who will be the next king after Charles, etc. And I watched the world leaders get up and give a standing ovation to the firemen and the fire chiefs and the artisans who brought, in a miracle, a cathedral back to life in only 5 years, including craftsmen who were the last people on earth in a group called Carpenters Without Borders, who came together to hew by hand the oak trees felled to rebuild the roof of the center of the cathedral. This cathedral then reopened, and the organ played again after silence for 5 years. By the way, I've been in Notre Dame once with a very good friend of mine called John Nelson, who was a fabulous conductor of the Orchestre de Paris. And he and his wife, and Jeannie and I, my wife, got together afterwards, and we were at his apartment talking, and he was a dedicated Christian who I think came from Wheaton College, the Christian college near Chicago, Illinois, and we were talking about the music of Bach. And I think what he conducted was that night with a fabulous choir in Notre Dame, I don't know, what was this, 12, 15 years ago, was the St. Matthew Passion, I believe. And I was so moved to see this cathedral revived again just a few days ago, with Donald Trump sitting there in the front row, thanking everybody for acknowledging him, and Elon Musk arriving late because he's so important, just before Joe Biden, and sandwiched between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. All that hubris of a Roman who conquers through strength and who offered to cage fight another captain of industry. But in the midst of all that, I gave thanks. I gave thanks for the fact that I am in Christendom and not in Saudi Arabia. I gave thanks for the fact that I'm in the United States and not fighting for democracy in a Hong Kong prison put there by the Chinese Communist Party. I gave thanks for the fact that I have been spared the ravages of the nonstop warrior Islamic movement across the world, that my son, who was in the Marine Corps from 1999 to 2004, fought against in Afghanistan and Iraq in those misbegotten and misled wars by the most powerful country on earth, that's us, and also one of the poorly led countries that fights wars that in the end are unwinnable and we bail. And that's a checkered history. And yet I am proud of my son's service. You know, I have a picture of him in my hallway, standing at a girls' school outside of Kabul, guarding it on a day off with another Marine, trying to keep the Taliban from coming in and killing the teachers, who have since probably been killed. And certainly all the girls have been denied an education. At the same time that the women in Iran are raped in jails for not wearing a head covering. And yet there are liberals who go around saying to say anything like this is Islamophobic. Well, let me tell you something. To be less than grateful that we're here in the United States, whatever you want to call it, is stupid. Now, when I looked at Donald Trump there in Notre Dame, and Macron, who, by the way, I happen to like, I'm not name dropping, but Jeannie and I had dinner once with Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, president of France, back in a chateau with a friend of ours, a lot of years ago. But I've been in and out of France a lot, and I speak fluent French because I grew up in a Swiss village where my parents planted their mission of L'Abri Fellowship back in 1947, and I was born in 52. Weird idea. It's kind of a Christian open home hippie commune before there were hippie communes run by fundamentalists. That's a weird background, and all the homeschooling I went through and the rest of it. I've seen it all. But put it this way, there were tears on my cheeks when 5 years ago Notre Dame burned. I remembered being in there filming an episode of How Should We Then Live with my father, Dr. Francis Schaeffer, and the beauty of having the cathedral to myself and the scariness of climbing up into one of the arches and realizing that there was no parapet there, and I hate heights, and telling the cameraman, you go get the shot. I'm climbing back down the little spiral staircase inside this column. I was thinking about that watching this. But here's what I was also thinking. If you are of the left and you voted against Donald Trump, as I did, and you worked your heart out against him, and you believe in gay rights and gay marriage, and you're thankful that women in America have rights that they have almost nowhere else, and you will fight tooth and nail to put Democrats back in office, from local school boards all the way up to the presidency at every opportunity, and you lament open carry laws and guns everywhere and all the rest of it, nevertheless, may I give you a word as this 72-year-old grandfather who's been around the block, who is the father of 3 adult grown children and 5 grandchildren, for whom I do childcare every single day of the week, the 3 youngest who live in my community. And it is the passion and joy of my life. Not my career, but my grandchildren. That said, may I give you a word? Pray for, fight for, work for the success of the Trump presidency. We live here, idiots. We live in a world in which Russia is attacking Western Europe. Pray for his wisdom. Fight for his wisdom. We live at a time when AI and the tech bros are trying to take over our entire culture, where people like Elon Musk and the executives at Meta spend hundreds of millions of dollars a year on personal security because they know how many people hate them. Proved again when an executive was shot down outside the Hilton in Midtown Manhattan the other day. Oh, in another industry, but oh, don't we hate our overlords? But that is not the American way. The American way is what I experience every morning when I walk my dog Zip. He's 9 years old now. Oh, how those Gray hairs on his muzzle scare me as I kiss him. He's my night nurse. He's my friend. He's my co-conspirator for a good life. And Zip and I walk, and guess who we talk to? We talk to people who had Trump signs on their lawn. God forbid! Aren't they the enemy? No, one of them plows my drive for free every winter and goes to an evangelical church run by brown people. But aren't they all racist? Well, no, he leads a Bible study with Hispanic women every Sunday in a Pentecostal church. And he's a Trump voter. And he's a Trump voter because he was driven crazy by some of the liberal agenda. We talk about the right wing wanting to own the liberals. How about the liberals wanting to own the right wing going all the way back into 1947 when Kinsey launched his report on sexuality that said everybody in America is an adulterer. Everybody in America does this, that, and the other, and all of which has been proved to be absolute bullshit, as well as the fact that he was a certified pedophile, counting on the pedophile studies of other pedophiles who were masturbating children as young as 18 months old while writing notes to him. And yet, with every new sexual invention, whether it's polyamory or whatever today's fad is, the New York Times, even today in 2024, acts like they've discovered something new. But really what they are doing, again, is standing in opposition to what they regard, heaven forfend, as, quote, traditional Christian values. But they're ignorant fools, because these are not traditional Christian values, such as fidelity and men caring for children and women hunter-gathering for food while men go hunting. This goes back for 1 million years into our hunter-gatherer past, before Jesus was the twinkle in the eye of any person anywhere, before there was a Bible or reading or writing or anything else. The only reason we're here is because we cared for each other. Not because we reject people because they had a Trump sign on their lawn. Pat lives up the street and she's an 8-year cancer survivor. How do I know that? Even though her husband flew a flag upside down when Barack Obama was elected. But why does he like me? Because he says, Frank, you know shit. And what he means by that is when he sees me, I'm in work clothes with a tape measure and my van is full of odds and ends from the construction projects on my son's house and my house. Because when I was a kid being homeschooled in Switzerland, which meant running riot through the Swiss Alps, one of the things I did just about every day was help our local mason, Mr. Bracci, and I learned how to cast concrete and stucco and build with bricks. And so I'm one of the people in my neighborhood, believe it or not, I'm a writer, blah, 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 blah. And all my friends went to Harvard. I didn't. I ran away from a boarding school in England when I was 15. But I could be mistaken for one of them, one of these liberal people. But the fact of the matter is, the same person who had the Trump sign out front when he rebuilt the chimney asked me how to do it. Because he, as he says, you know shit, Frank. And I know shit because I worked with my hands and I grew up in a farming village filled with the very kind of people who transposed to America in 2024 would have voted for Trump because they get sick of being looked down on. They get sick of being misnamed by liberals who say that they're not fully human because they don't say he, she, or they, them after their names. Deal with it. We have been trolling. We, the left, have trolled the right the way the right trolls us. Enough! It's Christmas time. Even liberals who are atheists like me have to admit that the only reason we have human rights as we conceive of them at all in our culture, as opposed to, say, Saudi Arabia, is because the inheritance that we have, luckily, from first our hunter-gatherers for 1 million years, and then 2,000 years ago from Jesus and St. Paul, who reminded us how to live. Oh, they also said crazy things about women, like Paul said, sit down, shut up, don't pray in church. But he also said, in Christ, there is neither Jew nor Gentile, male nor female. Was the bullshit added later, or was he just a Pharisee living in the Roman Empire, stuck in his own moment the way I am, stuck in mine, and you are stuck in yours? Let's have some mercy on each other. And let's have some mercy on the country that my son risked his life to fight for, even though the president who sent him to war, who I knew personally, by the way, because I was in the religious right back in the days when we schmoozed with presidents, that we bailed from. But he risked his life for an idea, and that was freedom. That was for the right of a little girl to go to school. That was for America to live free from the terrorist chaos that has engulfed Israel right now, who, by the way, is the spear point of the West, not in some new war that started with the Palestinians, but a 2,000-year-old conflict. Well, actually, it's more like a 1,500-year-old conflict with an entirely different view of truth and rights. Someone else perhaps could go into sometime, but different. Get real. You know, Elon Musk wants us all to go to Mars. Good luck with that. Right now, we're on Earth. Billionaires can dig all the bunkers they want and hire all the security guards they want. Our elites are a hated group of people hoarding the treasure that the rest of us should have in our bank accounts, despoiling our teenagers with their bullshit algorithms. But in the meantime, this is still the best we've got. It's called the United States of America, and I am a proud American. And when I saw Donald Trump sitting there in Notre Dame with everybody else, I did not curse him. I prayed for him. I didn't pray for him like some holy roller. I don't even believe those prayers are heard. It's knee-jerk response. I was raised by Edith Schaefer, my evangelical mother, so I still pray. You got a problem with that? I prayed for him out of self-interest. I prayed for him for my grandchildren. No, I don't want the Trump presidency to crash and burn, and I will do everything to help them succeed. You have a problem with that? The meaning of the Trump presidency isn't to help get a Democrat elected someday because they do so badly. They will take you down and your children down and your children's children down with them if they fail. And the very fact that that presidency is based on this wobbly con artist is no excuse for you to fight and work against them as an American citizen. Hope for, long for, work for the success of this presidency. Out of self-interest, this is the only lifeboat we have. The sharks snapping at our heels are Russia in Ukraine. Pray to God Ukraine can stand the pressure and that Trump has the wisdom to keep us in the game and help them. Wow, Joe Biden made a mistake by not doing more sooner for them. Pray for the Trump appointments that even though they seem unqualified, somehow they're moved by the Spirit, if you believe in the Spirit, and do a good job because you live here. The American game is not between Democrats and Republicans, Trump and all the rest of us. The American game is to survive and hold forth an ideal, imperfectly realized, but nevertheless the hope of the world. The only reason all the avenues to America are clogged with people climbing under barbed wire fences. They're not coming here because of all our faults. They're coming here because of the hope this country still represents, even though I'm sitting on a piece of property now stolen from Native Americans. And so is everyone else, because we've all moved around for the last million years, taking what's not ours. We are humans. Sorry. I'm no worse than anybody else because I'm white, and my black friends are no better than anybody else because their grandfathers and great-grandfathers were persecuted as slaves, and they can still be shot at traffic stops. That said, pray for our country. Merry Christmas.